BRUCAST is back, baby.
Do you remember in Interstellar? Have you seen this movie? At the beginning of the movie, they just have this drone flying around and whatever. And I think in the lore in the story, he used to belong to the military or surveillance company, and it was basically like your description of the future. We're gonna have those drones just taking care of the crops and taking care of the ocean, and so that's how you see the future. Like we're gonna have those drones everywhere, above the water, underwater, just surveilling everything.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
The one in Interstellar was based on an actual military drone,
Oh.
which is like a very so it would have been a Predator probably. I think it's MQ-7 or MQ-9. Who is, I think, General Atomics. So it's like a very typical like military drone, but that can carry rockets and things, so it's not like just surveillance. And these are very, very large aircraft that need a runway to take off from, and the reason they're very large, it's very simple. The physics for planes is if you want a plane that flies far and stays airborne a long time, you need a big plane. And so they're very large because they're designed to stay aloft for I can't remember exactly, but 12 hours, 24 hours. In the future, you're not going to have very large drones. If you want to deploy millions of drones, you don't want them to take off from airports. Like you don't want to build airports everywhere. You need smaller drones that take off and land vertically from an infrastructure that you barely see, and also it means something that you don't really notice. Our drones, when they fly at when they're cruising at the altitude collecting the data, you can't see them, you can't hear them. They're not like a visual or auditory pollution. The drone in Interstellar is like really big, very noisy. You don't want that flying around. Like that doesn't sound like a great future. You just want these things happening in the background without you noticing. And you're talking about crops, and that's definitely going to be something as well in the future that happens and will be beneficial. It's a bit difficult to do today, but crop monitoring with drones is going to be a big use case as well.
Why it's difficult to do it today?
Well, there's two reasons. One is, I was saying earlier, talking about in an industry, as it matures, you end up with people specializing onto different layer of the stack of the industry. So, like for planes, I said like people that build the seats. Early on, probably the aircraft company was building the seat themselves, and then later on, you have someone that specializes and just build the seats. That means when you're early in an industry, when you're building the industry from scratch, you want to pick up segments of your industry where there are as little layers as possible of that stack, because that means you minimize the number of people you need or the number of things you need to build yourself. And for example, marine monitoring, when you collect the data, the post-processing is relatively easy because, computer vision to detect a boat is one of the easiest kind of application of computer vision. It's quite mundane to do, actually. So it's not, if you imagine those layers to solve that problem, you need to collect the data, but then once you've collected it, you're basically done. It's very easy to post-process it. If you're talking about agriculture, you collect the data. Let's say it's the same as for us. It's just photos of the ground instead of the sea. Actually, that's not even the case. You need very specific camera. You need multispectral cameras for agriculture, but let's say it's really the same. Once you've done that in agriculture, you need to analyze that data to make recommendation on the type of nutrient you should be putting in or the pest control you should be doing. That's already a lot more complex than just detecting a boat or not. And then once you've done that, you need to wait until the farmer implements your recommendation. And then you need to wait for weather to also play its role. And then you need to wait maybe 12 months to actually have the crop output. And then at that point, you don't even know whether your recommendation is the main reason the crop was better or worse, because there are so many other variables that need to happen into it. So it's like getting back to that layer of the stack is like so many layers that it's very valuable to do ultimately, like extremely valuable, but if the industry is immature, you shouldn't start there. You should start on lower layer of stack. And the second reason it's also not great to do agriculture today is that I mentioned earlier, for regulatory purposes, you need a pilot to monitor the drone today. And that pilot typically needs to see the drone. And that means the drone is max 500 meters away from you. And that's you can imagine, like, it's kind of pointless to have something robotic if you need a pilot that follows the drone within 500 meters. It's kind of like you're defeating the point of it being robotic and that doesn't need supervision. So That's why most people that operate drone today, they're trying to fly further than that. And for us, for example, we want to fly what's called beyond line of sight. That means further than 500 meters. You can do that today, but you need exemptions. In the future, you won't need exemption. There will be, the regulators will have a system in place, but today you don't have that. Today you need exemptions. Those exemptions are much easier to get above water because you can say nobody really flies low level above water. You don't have small general aviation plane. You don't have gliders. And also on the ground, you don't have anything. So, if you have an immature technology where you're bound to fail, it's okay. If you're talking above crops, there's going to be people flying. There's going to be people on the ground. You're going to have to cross roads if you go between fields. So all of these things mean that it's actually much harder. So it's kind of like those two reasons, the complexity of the stack and the regulatory aspect. That means it's purely from like a feasibility, it's not the greatest place to start. In terms of value, again, incredibly valuable. So it will happen, but it's just in an immature industry, you don't want to do this. I mean, there are people doing it, but it's going to be niche and it's going to take a while to like mature and like properly scale. I think marine monitoring is a much better industry to start with.
Mm-hmm. Watch full episodes of the BRUCAST on the main YouTube channel, youtube.com/@brewfrasca.